Let's begin in Module 3, Site Setup and Basic Formatting. So in Module 3, you should have already created an animated GIF, and that is due on September 11th, so just depending on when you are viewing this video. If you have not completed that assignment yet, go ahead and look on our course page. That will be submitted in Discussion 3 in Module 2. So you will actually post your animated GIF here, and then you've got a week to comment on someone's post, so you have until September 18th to comment on a classmate's post. And I also posted in our Google Plus community, and I just wanted to point that out, some user interaction animations that might be helpful for you to see how you would use an animated GIF for a website. And in this article, there are some examples with some simple animations with clear directives to show the user how they need to interact with the website or with the platform or application. And so that would be something that you could think about, just to think ahead about how you might use an animation for your website due in the final site. So just kind of be thinking ahead on that. So in this module, you will respond to that animation by September 18th in the Discussion 3 forum. And then Homework 3, you will complete a master page and site plan. So let us look at Homework 3's assignment sheet. And you will use really any application that you're comfortable with to complete the assignment. In the past, we have used Muse. In my video in Module 1 and also following this, I will show you how to set up a site plan in Muse, which should be installed on our campus library computers on the Macs. But if you don't want to use Muse, since it's been discontinued, I'm not requiring it. So you can use Photoshop, you can use InDesign if you're familiar with those applications, or an application that you are already familiar with. So if you have any question about that, you can check with me on if it's appropriate or not. But the main idea here is to see your site plan. So you will watch the wireframe video that's linked here, watch the Muse interface video so you can get an idea of what I'm looking for, then watch this video, and then following this I will have more on how to set up the site plan in Muse. So you can watch all of that so you can understand what I'm looking for as far as the basic site structure, the hierarchy of the content. So what you'll do is you'll start with wireframing it, but then I want to see a final stage of the wireframing in a digital format. So don't just turn in a hand-drawn sketch, but I want to see it a little more refined in a digital format, so you can bring it then into InDesign or Muse or Photoshop and build it there. So I'm looking for a home page. Show me that you have a home page with 4 to 5 additional pages. They could be sibling or child pages. Name them so I know that they're clearly labeled. Include a master page layout. So if you have one frame of a basic layout that's going to be used for every page, show me what that layout's going to look like. And it should include text frames, a header, a footer, any kind of navigation elements, and graphic frames. And an easy way to show a graphic frame, to draw it, would be just the box with an X or the crossbars on it, and that's how it shows up in InDesign or in Muse when you just have a blank graphic frame without any content yet. So you don't have to actually place the image yet, but just show me where a graphic image may be placed. And then you'll want to turn that in, and it should look basically like what I'm going to show you in the video on Muse, with the frames in place, clearly labeled. And so here's the grading rubric for what I'm looking at. So look at, if you want to get a perfect score, look over to see what you need to include for that. And do include color. So that's another reason why I want it in a digital format. So show me the color that you're thinking for. So for this is going to be a site plan for one of your final sites. If you're not sure what you're doing for your professional site yet, then I would encourage you to do this for your e-portfolio. So set up a site plan for your own portfolio, and then you can actually use this site plan for your final site. And of course you may revise it along the way and change it up. So that's the idea behind homework 3. And then when you go on to homework 4, so homework 3 will be due the 18th of September. And then you've got another week to complete homework 4, which is the logo assignment. So let's just look back here. So homework 4 is due September 25th. So if you're going to do work in Muse, make sure you watch those Muse videos, watch the PBS web design and wireframing videos before completing homework 3. Then watch the logo design video, and you have a choice here. You can watch either the PBS logo design or the Gaijin logo video. So you get to choose, and then on the course page, I have some, let me go to Module 3 here, some study guides. So these go along with the videos, so you can download those and kind of take notes as you're watching the videos, and that's just for your own personal aid if you find that helpful or not. Okay, so back to what to do in this module. So after you've watched those logo videos, then watch this color video that's linked to the page as well, and that will just give you an idea how to use color. Then read this color theory article, and then you can actually complete homework 4 by designing your logo. And this will be a logo that you would use on a final site. So it could either be a logo for your personal e-portfolio or a logo that you might use for the professional site. So you want to go ahead and look ahead in Module 9 and look at the final project assignment sheets to see what's required of that, to get an idea of what you might want to do for your e-portfolio or professional site. So as another option here, let me go back to look at this website. We have an option here. So this is an existing website that's, I think it's done on Wix, called His High Places. It's a counseling ministry, and they have asked us to redesign their website. So you have the option to choose this for your professional site. If you want to redesign their website for them, then you could do that as an option for your professional site. So if you already have an idea in mind for your professional site, you do not have to do this, but if you're not sure, this may be a good option for you. And you can take a look, and I'll link this onto the Module 4 assignment, so you can, Module 3 homework 4 assignment, so you can take a look at this website. And then I'll also include this logo, which they have provided. So this is a current logo that they have. So if you choose to do this for your professional site, I want you to redesign their logo for this assignment. So remember, everything that we're doing is working towards the final sites. So if you're doing an e-portfolio, you could design a logo for yourself. If you're doing for professional site, design a logo for them. So if you've already designed a logo that you can use for your e-portfolio or professional site, you can submit that as well, as long as it's web format. So make sure, go back to the image formats assignment and make sure that it's web ready, saved in the appropriate web format. So this is the current logo for His High Places ministry, and you can look at kind of the idea that they have, take some of these elements and redesign it and clean it up, modify it. So I want to see something new and something different if you choose to do this for your professional site. So any questions about that, just shout out, send out an email to me if that's not clear. So then we'll look at homework 4. So this is the logo assignment. And so make sure you choose web appropriate colors. After reading the article and watching those videos, you should have a better idea of how to design a logo that's web ready. And those videos are linked on the assignment sheet here too. And then you will submit that logo in the homework 4 logo submission area, and you can look at the grading rubric here as well. So you will be assessed on these videos and the reading in Module 4. So in Module 4, you will refer back to this content to complete Quiz 2. Before we get started in Muse, I want to do a quick slideshow, just a Websites 101, talking about some terminology. Browsers, you will be viewing your websites from Muse or Dreamweaver in whichever browser you're using, whether that's Safari, Chrome, Firefox, or Explorer. And just so you know, I typically use Chrome. I also have Safari set up so I can view the websites that you're submitting in Safari and Chrome. So that's how I will be viewing it. And you want to try to test your websites out in preview in a couple of different browsers just to see how they appear. And then a web server hosts your website. So when you're searching for a site on a browser, such as Chrome or Safari, it goes across the internet to a server, and most of you will be using our web server through AppState web host, but you can also use other hosts, and you can pay to use a web host that will host your site if you pay for a domain name. So I mentioned before I've used GoDaddy and iPage, and then I pay a monthly fee to use their server, and they're hosting my website or websites. Devices, you know what that is, our desktop computers. Just know that people will be viewing your websites on different devices, so that's why we want to make sure that our sites are going to appear appropriately on desktops, on laptops, tablets, and mobile phones. At different screen sizes and different connection speeds. So that's important to keep in mind. So if you have files that are large, it may work on your computer, but someone else may have a much slower connection speed. So you want to make sure that your site is most accessible to the majority of viewers. Screen readers are good to also be aware of because some web users have visual impairments and use screen readers to read out the contents of a computer screen. So if they can't visually see the image, they want to be able to hear the description that's being read to them. This is a photo of a puppy playing on the grass, or whatever the image is. You want to have some descriptions for our screen readers. Creating websites, all websites use HTML and CSS, and we will be learning more about that in the next module. So your browser receives the code from the web server that hosts the site, and it interprets it to create what you are viewing on your browser. HTML5 and CSS3 are current standard versions. If you want to see the code for a site, you can go to View in your browser and look for the source or developer and select View Source. And then we'll go on and talk more about HTML in the next module, but I want to bring up the CMS or Content Management System. And many of you have used a CMS. WordPress is the most popular CMS. And I know some of you have used Wix or maybe Weebly. And those are systems where they can manage your websites, and most of them will have templates already that you can choose from, and you kind of just plug in your content. There are also ways that you can utilize those CMSs where you have more freedom to design your sites. You can also pay a fee rather than using the free service, and you can pay for a domain name as well. But for this class, we are not going to use a CMS. We are going to build our sites from the ground up. So it's good to have the knowledge of how to do that, and that's why we're going to use Muse and Dreamweaver to do that. Dreamweaver is Adobe standard software for web design and development. And we will be using Dreamweaver to build small websites for this class. So you will be using Dreamweaver to actually upload your files onto your web host. We're also going to be starting off with Adobe Muse just to get us more familiar with that application program, and then we're going to finish out in Dreamweaver. And some of you may felt like Dreamweaver is a bit outdated, but it is actually still being used, and it is still a standard software. So I talked to someone in the web development for ASU's website, and they're still using Dreamweaver. They use Drupal, Dreamweaver, and then language is using Cold Fusion. So Dreamweaver is still viable. And we will talk more about basic HTML in the next module. Let's go ahead and open Muse and set up a new site in Muse. Make sure you select fluid width, and that will allow you to have a responsive site for viewable in different device or screen sizes. And if you have the Adobe Muse Classroom in a book, textbook, you can follow along or go through Chapter 3 on your own, either way. If you'd rather use the textbook than watch this tutorial, that's fine too, whichever method you prefer. I am going to input a minimum width here of 800, and then our max width is 1200. I'm going to select 2 columns and change my gutter to 80. And I'm going to click on OK. And now you can see in Muse, you have 2 areas. You have one page, and it starts with the home page, and then you have a master page area. And that's where you can apply your master page, kind of like a template, and apply it to any of the pages on your website. So these are the actual pages on your website, and this is just the master area. We are primarily going to be working in plan mode because for this assignment, we just want to set up a site plan. So you've watched the wireframing video, you've sketched out a plan for your site, how many pages you want, what's going to be on each page, and now you're going to set that up in Muse. We're going to start on the master page and set up a master page, kind of a template or style sheet. And you will be required to have one master page on your site plan that you submit in this module. You can choose View, Fit Page in Window, or Command 0 to see the entire page. Then go to Page and Page Properties, and you can adjust the min height and min width for the master page. I'm going to go ahead and make my min height 800 and my min width 320 and click on OK. And then Command 0 to fit the page in view again. I'm going to go back to Page Properties, and in the metadata I want to give it a page title prefix and give it a title here. And then go back to plan mode, and I want to rename, by double clicking here, my pages with caps because I want them to be capped when I add my navigation menu later. So I'm going to go ahead and capitalize that. I'm going to go ahead and call my A-Master Home Master. So I'm going to double click on the master page, and now I'm going to add some elements here to my home page. Let's take a look at this master page. First we have this is our scrubber area or our breakpoint bar, and that shows you we've set this page at 1200 max width, and then it'll show you if I move the scrubber in, the page will resize 2 different preview widths. If I extend it beyond 1200, then the page cannot resize beyond 1200, and it's going to fill the browser with white. And we're going to fill that browser. You can fill it with a different color, or you can fill it with an image. If you click on the inside page area, it will jump back to the breakpoint at 1200. Then you can see the blue guidelines here. The bottom blue guideline here shows the bottom of your header area. Then here's your page area and your 2 columns. There's the gutter set at 80 pixels. And then down here, the top blue guideline in this bottom area is the top of the footer area. And then this bar shows you the bottom of the browser, and you can drag to adjust the padding, which is the amount of space below the page. This page button is the selection indicator. And then we've got some different options in the control panel here. We're going to move right to the browser fill and just click on browser fill. You can switch to gradient and it will fill that browser area with a gradient. We can switch back to solid. You can add a solid color. I'm going to select add an image in this case and select an image that I've created here in Photoshop. And now you want to make sure you first resize the image in Photoshop before you bring it into Muse. This is a JPEG here, but to save time, I'm going to select scale to fill, and I'm going to position it at the bottom because I have not resized the image to the size of my browser width and height here. I'm going to uncheck scrolling, and you can see that image is now filling the page. And if I move that scrubber, you'll see that that image is going to fill the browser window even if I resize it onto a different screen size. Now I want to add a logo to my header area, and I'm going to go to File, Place. And I've got a logo here that I created in Photoshop and saved it as a PNG because I want it on a transparent background. Now again, you want to resize it in Photoshop first before you bring it into Muse, especially if I'm going to use it at a smaller size. In my selection tool, I'm going to drag it down to about 30% so that it's going to fit in my header area. What I want to do is go back to Photoshop and then resize it there so that I'm not uploading files that are larger than needed, and that's going to save time when I'm uploading the files, and also for users when the website is uploading, it'll upload faster if my images are resized correctly. So now I have a logo in my header area, and I can actually add some text too. You can add your text in Photoshop if you want, then when it's going to rasterize it, or you can do it in Muse. You could also do it as a SVG, a scalable vector graphic, but we're not really going to touch on that in this class. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to my text tool. I want to change it to a web font. Just keep in mind, if you're not using a web font, if you're using some other font, it may not show up on the browser depending on the browser that you're using or that the user is using. They may move down to a different font. It may go down to a list of fonts that are whichever font is available at the time. So whichever font you select, just keep in mind it may not be the exact font that shows up on a user's browser. You can change the size of the font and the color. I'm going to select this red color and just type in some text. And I'm going to track it out a bit and capitalize it. So now I've got kind of an element with a logo in the header element. If I go to plan mode, I can see that that style and that logo is added to my home page because I have attributed that master page to my home page. And you can just physically drag it over. You can also go to Control right click and apply a master page style that way. Don't forget to go to page properties and add your metadata. The description is going to show up when you do a search on a search engine. When it brings up the name or the title of your website, there will be a description underneath that in the search engine. So you want to make sure you have a meaningful description that describes the content of your site and what you want to represent. And then you can add some keywords as well. So make sure that you add that on your site plan to your web pages. I'm going to create some additional pages here by clicking on the Add or Insert Page button. Keeping my caps lock on, I'm going to add a menu page. Turn that off instead. And a contact page. And then I want to create a page underneath this contact page. So I can only access page through the contact page by adding a link on that contact page. I'm going to call this Thank You. And now I'm starting to create a site plan. Now your site plan may not have all the graphics. You may not have your graphics ready. You may not have your logo ready yet. And you can turn off the thumbnail and badges just to see the site structure, because that's what we're really interested in at this point. After you've watched the wireframing video and you've sketched out your pages and the hierarchy and the structure, then you can create that structure in Muse, and that's what we're doing here. So I'm going to turn these back on, but you can turn those off and on. And I'm going to add another master page, and I want to attribute this master page to the home page. So now it's got the same style as the home page, and I'm going to call it a different name though. I want to call this internal master. And remember, when I click on a page, I cannot change the elements that are on the master page. If I go back to plan mode and then double click on a master page, it brings the page up in design view, and I can only change the element on the master page. Now I can't change it here on the internal master page because I have to go back and change it on the home master page. So I'm going to open up this internal master page again, and I'm just going to add a guideline starting at my ruler in my selection tool, and I'm going to place this guideline at about 320 pixels because I'm going to go back and use that later. And going back to plan mode, I can see now that guideline is not showing up on my web pages because it's not set to the internal master page, it's set to the home master page. So holding down Control right click, I'm going to apply the internal master page now on these web pages. And now when I go to design mode, I can see that guideline. I want to go back to my home master page now in design view, and I want to open up the layers. If you don't see layers here, you can go to Window and open up layers from there. I'm going to expand my layer, and I only have one layer right now. I want to create some new layers because that's going to help me when I add more elements to stay organized. So I'm going to click on the Add New Layer button, and if I double click on the name here, I'm going to call that header, and you can see it's attributing that layer to the color red, and that just helps you to differentiate these layers. I'm going to call this layer page, and then create another layer for the footer. You can see this layer is colored green. Now, my logo elements are on my page layer, but I actually want them on the header. So I'm just going to drag those elements up by selecting this box into the header layer. And now if I expand my header, you can see the logo and the text is on my header layer. If I turn the visibility off by clicking on the eye, I can see that that is all now on one layer. Now I want to drag my footer layer below the page because my footer is going to be the last layer. So I'm going to close that for now, and we can use that later on. I want to go to my widgets library. You can go again from Window, access it from there if you don't see it on your panel. And I want to select Menu, Horizontal Menu, to add a navigation menu bar. And I want to add it here to the top of my header. And I can adjust and format and customize this menu bar. So if I click on the label, I can open up text. And again, I'm going to change it to a web font. And I'm going to change the text size. And I could change the color if I want. And also adjust the tracking. Then I can select the entire menu and adjust the size. And I'm going to reduce the size here to about 300 pixels in width. And you still want to leave room in case another font appears in the browser that may be a little bit wider. You want to leave some room here for that font to expand if needed. Now I'm going to click on States, and again you can access it through the window. And I can change the rollover and mouse down state. So right now it's set, when I go to rollover, it's set to this medium gray, and then mouse down it gets grayer. If I'm going to click on text, and I'm going to change that color to red. So when I roll over, it's going to change to red. If you click on the trash can, it will reset to default. So on mouse down, I'm going to reset to default. And then on the rollover, I'm going to go back and change that to red. And then you can click the preview mode to see the behavior. So when I roll over this button, the text changes to red. I'm going to go back to design view, and you can change that for the other elements in that navigation bar too. Now when we added the navigation bar, I just used the default settings and centered the text, but you can play around with the different formatting. You can also add submenus if you wanted to add a submenu for your contact page, for example, for pages that are nested within that page. I'm going to go back to plan view, and now you can see the navigation bar that is added to each one of the pages on the site. If I add a page, say I want to add an events page or a samples page, it's going to automatically add that tab to your navigation menu. If I want to get rid of that, I can go to my control, right click, and go to menu options and select exclude page from menus. So now that page is not included in the menu bar. So now I've got a few pages set up on my site. What I want for you to submit is some wireframing elements. For example, if I go to this page, I might want to add some text frames. I'm going to add a text frame here and a text frame here. And then in the text, I want to just type in some placeholder text to let me know what's going to go here. Maybe it's an introduction, an overview, introduction of myself, overview of the site, structure, or just give me some content and let me know what's going to go here. So it doesn't have to be finalized yet. Maybe I want to add a graphic frame, and I'm going to use my selection tool to place that where I want it. And then just so that I can see it, you can go to your swatches and maybe fill it with a color or just a gray fill just so that I can see it. And then in this area, you can tell me what's going to be here. Maybe it's going to be a video or a large image. So you can show me with your wireframing what's going to be there. You could also give it an outline or a stroke so that it appears. And if you do a preview, that's how it's going to look on the browser window. But I will be looking at it in plan and some in design view, but mainly I just want to see it in plan mode where your elements are going to be. So that's what I mean by wireframing. So you want to show me how many pages you have. You need to include a home page and then at least 4 additional pages. They could be sibling pages, parent pages, or child pages. You want to include at least one master page layout that has a layout structure on there. If you don't have your graphics and your logo yet, that's okay, but at least show me, like I did here, what that layout is going to look like on your master page. Show me where the header is going to be, the footer, and any navigation elements. So back to my master page, maybe I will add a text box in the footer area and just put footer or some text there. And that's going to be on all the pages because I added it to the master page. Now if I see I don't like that positioning on that page, I can go back to my master page and move it down. When you've got a site set up and you are ready to submit your site plan, save your site, and you want to create a folder to put your site, your Muse site into. So here I've actually got 2 in here, but I've got my Muse site folder, and within that I have the Muse site, and then I have my graphics. So if you don't have any graphics at this point, that's okay, but you will add them later on, so you want to go ahead and create a folder. Then you can compress that folder. Oops, I just compressed my logo, but you want to compress the entire folder, which I've got a compressed file here, and then it will create a zipped folder, and you can upload that single zipped file onto the As You Learn course page in the submission area for this assignment.